Previously, Anjano is a douchebag, but we love him anyway. And now you know why we call this segment Marriage Problems. Yeah, and she says, I'm done.
Like, closer here, right?
Yeah.
Anchor closer. So I figure out a plan, I do all the things in the most efficient way. And lifelong friends, right? One of my best friends, my cousin, like, we've known each other our entire lives. And this past year, she said to me, Alicia, she's like, I swear Alicia has always had more hours in her day than I have in mine.
It feels like it, yeah.
Right? And that was an interesting perspective for me, right? Like, because we only see the sides of ourselves that we see, right? But to the outside world, like my lifelong best friend, you know, giving that perspective, I was like, okay, that's valid. But like, I will get the job done, and I have goals, and I will work towards them relentlessly, for better or for worse, right?
Yeah.
Like, and this is part of my journey of learning, like, is this serving me? Am I out of balance? And nobody can answer those questions for you. You have to answer those questions for yourself. But what this had looked like for years and years and years of going through a lot of sickness and these 4 pregnancies and homeschooling all of our children and running the business end of the therapy practice and all of that, it looked like that I worked 16 to 18 hours a day every single day.
Yeah.
And I had done that for 7+ years, right?
Yeah.
And I had a goal, and I was going to accomplish that goal no matter what. And so, you know, as if you'll imagine them as blocks, if you will, of responsibilities, right? You would drop blocks of responsibilities, and I would say, hey, we're moving towards this goal. We're trying to get there. Let me pick up those blocks. Let me handle that, right? And so as you dropped blocks, I just picked up more and more blocks, and I just did more and more. And because the perspective is we're a partnership, we're both doing the best we can, and granted, the best we can vary, you know,
Looks
depending
different.
on perspective. But there was a drastic imbalance that I wasn't aware of, and I became a little bit aware, and then over the next couple of years, of how enabling I was being. And we talk about these different personality types. What we haven't talked about in this series is like the go-to emotions of each personality type.
Yeah.
Like the go-to emotion of healers is sadness, right? But
When things are hard, a healer's gonna feel sad.
Looks like a disaster. Why wasn't I invited?
a healer's gonna feel sad. And healers and dreamers are going to both be avoidant for different reasons.
Yeah, well, dreamers and healers both avoid things that make them uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's true of any person depending on what the thing is, but it's
Right.
especially prominent in dreamers and healers. And I am a dreamer and a healer, so I had a lot of that going on.
Yeah, and so that had been a coping mechanism for you
Yeah.
your entire life, right? And a closer, their go-to emotion is anger.
Yeah.
Typically, right?
Yeah.
And every personality type is a spectrum of maturity. You get more mature closers. They don't tend to be volcanic with their anger, right? But that's
Yeah.
still going to be their go-to emotion. And thinkers are just going to try and logic their way out of it. I'm like, I just need to create a different plan. I need to create a better plan, right? And so in that moment of awareness of this huge imbalance that we had, and how it was created, I was so angry. There was a lot of anger.
It was scary.
Yeah.
Not like abuse scary, just like it was scary to see you that mad,
Yeah.
especially as a healer.
No, don't like that.
So my solution, like, I don't feel like I communicated that anger. I didn't necessarily take it out on you, but I just said, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done. Like, I will continue maintaining the things that I maintain. And for me to say that I'm done, like, that's huge because
Because you're never done.
because I had spent years,
Yeah.
building a business that I believed in, and a cause I believed in. And frankly, another one of the challenges has been, I've always believed in you and your capabilities more than you believed in yourself.
Yeah.
The marketing funnels, like everything.
You said figure out how to market yourself, figure out how to
Yeah.
run the business, make sure there's enough money in our bank account. I'm going to enjoy Asia.
Yeah.
And
And I was like, figure it out. Right, well, good luck. And another component to all of this is your mom had passed away the year before we met.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was hard. That was one of the hardest things that you had ever gone through.
To that point, it was the hardest thing.
Right.
Working on our marriage is now
It's now the hardest.
the hardest. No, but completely worth it. But like just being honest, like
Right.
you see what we're dealing with here, like the differences. It's been harder.
Well, and so there was a component, like you were still mourning your mom, and you and your mom had been so close, and you're very similar in personalities. And you said to me one time recently, you said, I was looking for someone to take care of me.
I wasn't consciously looking for someone to take care of me.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying I want to marry a mom and be her child and have her take care of me. Like,
Yeah.
but I was looking, like I know emotionally, I was looking for someone to fill that hole.
Right.
I want to address a couple things really fast.
Oh, go for it.
I'm not super. I don't care a lot about public perception. Like my mistakes are my mistakes. Obviously, I'm doing these videos because I'm willing to air them publicly. But I wanted to clarify something. You know, you talk about enabling. Mm-hmm. You are an overfunctioner. Your words,
Chronic.
right? Chronic overfunctioner.
Chronic overfunctioner.
And this pattern didn't just show up in our marriage. It showed up
No.
in a lot of your relationships where you are so...
Almost all of them.
Where you give the appearance of handling and managing things almost superhuman to
Yeah.
other people's eyes. That people are like, Alicia's got it.
Yeah.
Alicia's got it.
Yeah.
Alicia's got it. And so for a long time, I was just like, we're both playing to our strengths. We're both doing what we're good at. Alicia's got this. And I loved her for it. I was amazed by it, and I appreciated it in my way. I didn't appreciate it in the way that you needed,
Yeah.
but I appreciated it so much. I'm like, I can focus on helping people. I can focus on sitting there across and helping the person in front of me and doing what I feel like I was put on this earth to do. And it's so amazing that I'm blessed with this person who can manage all this stuff so I can focus on that. And so it was never deliberately like a screw you type of thing. Like
No.
And then so part of the enabling is if you've ever seen the movie The Adam Project, there's a moment where Ryan Reynolds is in a bar with Jennifer Garner. He's time traveled. He's the adult version of her son, but at the time for her son is 10 years old. She doesn't realize she's talking to the adult version of her son who's got all this insight. They're both mourning the loss of the father at the time, her and her little boy. And her son treats her like garbage. And as an adult, he regrets it, and he's talking to his mom, just giving her advice as just like some guy in a bar. And he says to her,
Aren't you grieving too?
Yeah, I am.
So tell him. You should tell him.
I don't think he needs
You know,
it.
you think you're being strong for him. And the problem with acting like you have it all together is he believes it.
And I voiced it in little ways.
Yeah.
But not in enough ways where there wasn't enough clarity there. And I didn't even have enough clarity.
Right.
Right? It wasn't until this got so big
yeah,
that because this point that we're talking about being in Southeast Asia, like that was the beginning.
right.
That was the precipice.
Right, but so the point is, like in the little ways leading up to it, you'd voice your unhappiness or you'd voice your frustration, and I saw you. I mean, I told you this before filming,
Yeah.
but I'm going to tell you this now. I saw her.
He's gonna tell you.
I'll tell
too.
you. I saw her as superhuman. And so when she would come to me, most people could come to me with problems and I'd have guidance and solutions and I'd feel like I wasn't out of my depth. But this isn't a cop-out. I admired her so much and saw her as so far out of my league when it came to managing life, that when she'd tell me that she was struggling, I would sympathize, but I'd be like, I'm not the person who can help you. Like, I'm not capable to, like, it'd be like Wonder Woman asking a civilian for help lifting a heavy object. The civilian's like, you got this. Like, there's nothing I can add compared to what you're already bringing to it. Like, that was my mentality. which was false, which was a limiting self-belief about myself and what I was able to offer. And it wasn't until not only were you like, I'm out, like in Asia, I started to figure out, okay, like, you're like, I'm out, and make sure there's enough money in the bank account and figure out how to market yourself so that you have therapy clients. Like, and I did, because it was sink or swim. But that was my first step into like things that I wasn't comfortable with, doing it and being like, holy crap, like I can do this. Like, I wonder what else I can do. And there's so much more we can talk about on this, and we will, but like, I've had a lot more insecurities and fears to wrestle through, and it really wasn't until you said, I want a divorce. And that I'm like, I really need to take a hard look at myself and make changes. And even then, the change was slow and arduous, because working through psychological things, and I became, you know, when you don't know this, but some of you may know this, when Obi-Wan says to Anakin,
Now you have become the very thing you swore to destroy.
I don't seek to destroy men, but like I'd had so many men in my office who were said, the wife would say, we've been having problems for years, and the husband would say, we were fine until 2 weeks ago, right? And so many husbands who don't see just how important it is to make the hard changes until like divorce is on the line. And I always, like, I don't think I looked at them with judgment, but I couldn't believe that was happening to me. Like, I couldn't believe that I was that guy. Like, it was really, really humbling for me. And I know we've been going on for a minute, but like, do we want the same things out of life?
Right. So that was the period of our life where we started having that conversation.
Yeah.
Because there was always an awareness of our differences. Like,
Yeah.
that was apparent from the beginning. But a decade into marriage, it became very apparent to me that you had said yes to things that you didn't maybe necessarily mean
No.
yes to.
Well,
And I was tired. I was tired of being the pusher. I was tired of being the puller.
Yeah.
I was tired of basically steering the ship. And you would do what I asked you to do.
yeah.
Well,
I wasn't lazy. Like, you
No.
always told me, like, working hard is not your problem.
right.
Right? Like, I didn't have a problem with working hard. It was, what did I really want? Because if I
Yeah.
didn't really want it, I wouldn't throw all my efforts behind it. And
Right.
and the biggest problem, and this is a takeaway, like when you're dating somebody, Alicia told me what she wanted out of life. I didn't really know what I wanted out of life. I knew I wanted her. So when you told me what you wanted out of life, I'm like, yes, absolutely, we'll make that happen. And I didn't count the cost, and I didn't know myself well enough to say, is this really what I want? The honest truth is, had I truly been in touch with what do I really want, would we have gotten married? I don't know. Like, I might have looked at that and say, you know what? I want a 9 to 5.
I do the job. And then I get paid.
You've told me many times, like, if you had married someone like you would have been very comfortable and very happy, and you would have made her very happy. And my response is always, yeah, but I would not have grown the way that I've grown, which isn't an endorsement for marrying your total opposite so you can experience the growth. What I'm saying, because like if you marry, my cousin married her male identical, like
Yeah.
they're so in sync, it's crazy. And
it's beautiful.
And it's beautiful, and they're very happy. Even at its worst, I've always thought, but look who I'm becoming. Like, the things that I don't like about myself, the things that I hate about myself, the dark corners I've been afraid to explore, the weaknesses I've been afraid to work on, I've had to work on. And I wasn't always a willing participant in that. but then the end result.
Got pushed and pulled.
But then the end result is like, I'm glad that I did that.
Yeah.
And now I'm finally at a place, I'm 42 this year, where I'm where you were in some ways 15, 16 years ago, where I'm happy to look at things and say, I want to improve this because I don't want this weakness anymore. Right? I want to look at myself in the mirror and know that I've conquered this.
From a point of understanding a decade later of like, okay, do we want the same things? And are we in some ways recommitting to it, but are we committing the first time? And that doesn't make you a bad person, and it doesn't make me a bad person, and it doesn't make you wrong and me right, or vice versa, right? But do we want the same things out of life? And if we do want the same things out of life, how are we going to meet those needs moving forward in a healthier way than we've done it in the past? Because there's imbalances, there's patterns. I enabled out of love, you know, but I enabled.
And then I let you.
Yeah, and then you let me, because that was more comfortable. I didn't want to be that chronic over-functioner anymore, right? Like, and that's where the conversations happen in growth, as we become aware of parts of ourselves that we weren't aware of before. Like, first it's shocking, then it's upsetting, and we can so easily go into judgment, and instead meet that with compassion and say, and for me being a thinker, I want to understand, right? So I always evaluate my life patterns, and after I spend some time evaluating, I'm like, oh, I can see why I behave this way, and I can see how it served me, and I can see how I kept doing it, and it's not serving me anymore. It's hurting me. And that is so challenging to say, I'm going to do a script rewrite, and that's going to affect your script. And there is years of our marriage where I'm having these conversations with you, and you were not happy. And you were like, this is uncomfortable, and our script was working fine, and why are you trying to change it?
I think that's how that came
all
across
unconscious.
to you.
All unconscious.
I think that was because...
That was the not said
component.
No,
because consciously I was like, I want our marriage to work and I want you to be happy, so like, of course I'll do anything, but like unconsciously I was like, I don't know if I'm willing to do that.
You're like, that's too big of an ask.
I would do anything for love, but I won't do that.
And so, and it takes a realness and a rawness and a vulnerability. It takes knowing yourself and then communicating that. And then you can only have success in communicating that if it's a safe place. And of course there's defensiveness that comes up, right?
Well, and for different reasons, like we had different times where I didn't feel safe with you or you didn't feel safe with me, and none of that was intentional, and a lot of it was, you know, in my case it was what I was bringing to it, that I didn't feel safe with you. It wasn't what you were doing, but like, it's hard.
We all have to work through the wounds that have been created earlier in our life because they're showing up. Right? Like those wounds you had and the wounds I had, like they absolutely showed up in our marriage. Right?
And small things became big things. So do you want the same things out of life? Know that going in. And if you're in a relationship and you're not sure, like...
Or revisit it. And be honest about having to revisit it.
And revisit it continually, because what you wanted out of life hasn't really changed, but what I did has. And I'm happy to say, like, the more we traveled, the more I wanted that life.
Right.
You know, the more that I grew to genuinely love it myself. And I'm finally stepping in. I started, like, in Asia, my closer started activated because I had to get stuff done. But I'm finally, like, activating my thinker side, which has been the hardest thing for me. But it was there all along. And we really do limit ourselves with our negative self-beliefs.
Until he finds out how screwed up I am and he dumps me, we are going to have the most wonderful marriage.
I think the point is we all have blind spots. We all have shadows. We all have things we don't understand about ourselves. And then there's the component that we're not the same person today that we were yesterday, right? And a week from now and a month from now, and having to revisit that from a better point of understanding of what are my needs, what are your needs, what were our expectations that we were aware of, what were the ones we weren't, and is the goal to work through that and towards that together. And I think there's a misconception that we don't have to revisit that in a marriage again and again and again. And for some people you don't, but for most of us,
most people do.
We do.
And the assumption that you don't generally lands people in counseling, which isn't a bad place to be. I'm a big believer in it, but it's how people get there, because small things become big things because they don't address them, or they proceed on assumptions, and they perceive that the person I knew 10 years ago is the person that's before me now, and it's not the case. What have you found? If you're with somebody who's very different from you, do you want the same things out of life? And if not, how do you get there? Can you get there? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you have #marriage problems, we have counselors and programs waiting for you. Go to mendedlife.com, schedule a complimentary 15-minute consultation with one of our team, or check out our membership site where Alicia and I share even more about what we've been through, what we're learning together, and the things that I teach people in therapy. It's all there on that membership site for a low cost every month.
And we have our 4th and final video that's gonna wrap this all up.
About being married to a delicate flower. That's me. Until next time, folks, keep shining. We need your light.